On December 7th, 1941, the United States was attacked on Hawaii from Japan. The attack came as a surprise to the United States, which would ultimately throw the U.S. into World War II. After the attack, Hawaii became under martial law because of the concern of Japanese Americans already living on the island. This idea of martial law on Hawaii was from the belief of Japanese spies living on Hawaii that helped with the attack or could possibly help with future attacks. Under martial law, government officials rounded up and selected close to 1,500 Japanese civilians living in Hawaii. The officials sent them to detention camps, imposed curfews, and travel restrictions on the Japanese civilians. About 2 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the reigning president, Roosevelt, issued an executive order which gave the military power to designate zones where people can be excluded for national defense purposes. From this, about 112,000 Japanese families were forced to go to camps on the United States mainland. This meant, with about a 2-week notice, Japanese civilians had to leave their homes and bring only what they could carry. Many civilians had to sell their homes, their stores, and most of their assets to be used during life in the camps. Many of the civilians, while being evacuated, were held in temporary centers like military barracks. Then, they were usually sent to one of 10 different intermittent camps. These camps were ran and set up by the War Relocation Authority, or WRA. They were located in California, Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, and Arkansas. They were all guarded and enclosed with barbed wire, and they had the intent and authority to shoot and kill escaping Japanese citizens. These camps were self-contained communities with hospitals, schools, and each with their own specialized form of government. The WRA allowed one family per room, which were extremely small and had cots and mattresses, blankets, a stove, and a single light. They had to use public restrooms and laundry to wash their clothes. They ate meals in a mess hall for their daily 3-time meal. They were given small allowances for clothes and other personal items, around $5 per week. There were rare places to work and gain wages, but the wages were extremely low compared to the outside world. Family life and social interaction took an extreme dip during life in the camps. Parents lost power over their children because they had the same work and social status as their children. There were the occasional baseball leagues and movies which the Japanese could attend and participate, but they were extremely rare. Families also did not get to see outside relatives due to separation throughout the camps. In 1943, the WRA started to allow 17-year-olds to leave camp. The WRA would distribute a questionnaire designed to determine whether they had allegiance to the Japanese emperor. Those who would pass the test would be allowed to leave the camp for school or work. Also, some of the civilians were allowed to join specific Japanese regiments in the United States Army to fight the war in the Pacific. Finally, throughout December 1944, Japanese civilians were gradually allowed to leave the camps throughout the country. Unfortunately, many of their homes and businesses were vandalized, destroyed, or taken over. The financial loss to the Japanese civilians during their time in the camps were roughly $400 million, or $5.2 billion in today's money. After the war, a man named Fred Korematsu decided to test the government relocation action in courts. The famous name for the case was Korematsu versus the United States. The Supreme Court ruled, unfortunately, that the executive order was a wartime necessity. After this ruling, many Japanese civilians received hostility from neighbors and towns, which did not allow them to return to their village. This caused the civilians to scatter across the country with nowhere to go. Finally, in 1988, Congress made an attempt to apologize to the civilians by awarding them each with $20,000.